While we're on the topic of lightweight, we have to talk about Khabib. Obviously, he put out the social media post. He's going to be gone till the end of the year. A lot of discussion over who he should fight next. A lot of great options there in the lightweight division. Who would you like to see Khabib defend his title against?
Well, it's hard to know what Tony Ferguson's timeline is, right? And November doesn't seem all that realistic based on the severity of the injury. Of course, I'm no doctor. Tony Ferguson's an absolute freak. So far be it from me to doubt when he could possibly return. And I don't know what Dana White's appetite is for that fight and making it a fifth time. You know, Joe Rogan told me after our broadcast at 223 or whatever it was that he would talk to Dana and try to get the wheels in motion for that fight to be made a fifth time. But
good. It needs to be made.
I mean, and the Conor McGregor, obviously, that's the elephant in the room. Does Conor want that fight? Will his legal situation even rear its ugly head in this whole situation? So if Conor McGregor is ready, willing, and able, then that's obviously the fight to make. I think Dustin Poirier, on the merits of what he has accomplished, should be in that conversation. I think Eddie Alvarez maybe less so, but certainly the Underground King has an argument there. And, you know, I mean, don't sleep on Nate Diaz, too, right? He moves the needle. We don't know what the internal metrics say about Diaz on pay-per-view, but I would imagine he's pretty strong. So a lot of different possibilities, but I wouldn't really hate any of them. I think it's just a shame for Tony that the injury is as severe as it is, because as you mentioned, there's so many big fights for that guy right now, and he's not going to realize those paydays and those championship opportunities probably until 2019, maybe not even till the second quarter. So we'll see.
And you know, the thing with like Tony and Khabib, I mean, the injuries that they've suffered, it can happen, you know, before any opponent. So not making that fight doesn't really make sense because, hey, they could get injured fighting Conor McGregor or Nate Diaz or anyone you throw together with them. But I want to get your thoughts on the Conor McGregor situation because, you know, despite what he did and all the consequences, doesn't really look like the UFC are going to punish him. And it doesn't even look like they will even be able to punish him because realistically, you know, he's a huge name. He's going to fight at some point. And obviously, you know, they're not going to fire him or anything like that. Is there anything that can be done at all?
Well, it's tricky because the calendar continues to turn and nothing has been done, right? So the UFC could have gotten ahead of it and maybe tried to get ahead of the law, but I don't know that that made a ton of sense. So they're waiting for the legal stuff to take its course. All the while, you could argue that he's being suspended right now, right? I mean, I know this isn't necessarily the guy who wants to fight next weekend, but, you know, what if he wanted to step up on short notice here in a few weeks with all these massive welterweight main events? Would he be prevented from doing so? I don't know the answer to that question. So I hope we get some sort of resolution sooner rather than later, but it's hard to blame the UFC for not sort of laying back in the cut and waiting to see what happens legally there in New York.
And I guess there's also the situation from his perspective. You know, do you think that him getting away with sort of minimal punishments, it would only add to Conor McGregor's somewhat, you know, feeling of invincibility, because it seems like he's been sort of pushing the boundaries of that for a while now. He's had a few of these, I guess, public meltdowns, and he's not really seeing any repercussions. And, you know, I'm not some expert on, you know, young men with lots of money, but it kind of seems like if they, you know, hey, I'm a young man, I don't have a lot of money, but it kind of seems like, you know, when there are no repercussions, it only fuels that fire to say, hey, you are invincible, and there are really no boundaries to what you can do.
Right. And of course, I won't be the first one on your airwaves to say that volley could have done a lot more damage. And we could be talking about a guy who is in prison for a couple decades. Right. So it's not like he threw the dolly at the base of the bus and just wanted to make a statement. You know, he got so reckless that he really endangered some lives. So, yeah, man, it's a lot to digest, and a lot of people are very disappointed. I think that there will be some sort of punishment. What that's going to be, I really don't know. And I just think it's such a tricky situation, right? Because you can argue out of one side of your mouth and say, hey, you're going to set a standard here. If this guy doesn't get punished, you know, all bets are off when the next guy steps out of line during fight week or otherwise. But this is not just a special case, right? This is Conor McGregor, and there will never be another, right? This is the biggest star in mixed martial arts history, and it's starting to feel like Ronda Rousey isn't even a close second, or John Jones a close second. So you're asking me, I mean, how would I handle this as a promoter? I really don't know. I think it's easy for me to say if I was the boss, you know, I'd be coming down hard on the guy. But you know, I guess I'd just like to see him be remorseful, especially publicly, to all of these fighters. And poor Ray Borg going through his own personal hell right now with his child. So, I'd like to see something like that. Even like Li Jingliang, and I hate to get off topic, but what happened with him in Shanghai against Zach Otto and the eye gouge, all you got to do sometimes, and I hate to minimize what Conor did, but get out ahead of it. Make a public statement. Be sincere and genuine and heartfelt in your apology and make it quick. And I thought for Li Jingliang, if he had just come out and issued something publicly, that could have dissipate a little bit. So I think for Conor, that's what I'd like to see. And again, I'm not sure New York is in any rush, but I'd also be surprised to see the New York State Athletic Commission, let Conor fight there anytime soon.
Was the situation, you think, even more difficult, not only because, some fighters got injured and fights got canceled, because obviously the UFC employees on the bus also had to go through that ordeal. And we saw there was some serious injuries sustained. I think a broken knuckle or a broken hand. Have you been able to speak to any of the colleagues that were on that bus? Is everyone sort of recovered or dealing okay after that whole situation?
Yeah, the staff was okay. And, some bumps and bruises, obviously, that you outlined. I just, for Rose Namajunas, right, being right there in the line of fire, so to speak. And again, given what the backdrop in this country has been, right, if I'm on that bus, am I thinking it's a terrorist attack? I don't know if I can make that leap, but I think for a lot of people, you feel like you're under attack and you feel like it's an act of terrorism as it's going down. So for Rose Namajunas to have that be what starts her evening and her weight cut, 2 nights before her title defense against Joanna, and for all the other fighters to be able to compete and rise above that situation was just so incredible. But yeah, the staffers are okay, and thankfully it wasn't worse. It could have been, it was melee. It could have been even worse, and thankfully, everybody does seem to be okay.
On a lighter note, I mean, early predictions, if that was the fight that was to happen, Khabib versus Conor, who would you be leaning towards in that one?
Kenny Florian and I have talked a lot about this on our podcast and which lightweight is best equipped to beat Khabib Nurmagomedov, who I still believe is the most dominant force in the game. If that means I think he is the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, I don't know. But when he's at his best, I think he is certainly the most suffocating and the most dominating. But if I had to pick one lightweight to beat him, it's Conor McGregor because of the accuracy and the precision and the power and the footwork and the distance management and understanding and everything that makes him the world-class, generational type striker that he is. So that's the fight. I think it's pretty close on paper. I think Khabib deserves the distinction as the betting favorite, but Conor's the guy. If I had to pick one lightweight to beat Khabib, Conor's the guy, and that's the fight. And hopefully Conor is willing to step back from this type of layoff against that type of monster. I'm just not sure that fight is the most appetizing one for Conor to make this return, but hopefully it'll happen, and hopefully it'll be November at MSG.
Do you reckon maybe, I guess in his mind, it would make sense to sort of take maybe a lesser matchup, maybe somebody a little bit less dominant, and then sort of warm himself up towards Khabib?
Yeah, I think so. And as I've said repeatedly, I think it was more likely that Conor McGregor would come back in a situation in which he was the betting favorite, whether it was against Nate Diaz or Tony Ferguson, whom he would probably be favored to beat. But this matchup stylistically is a huge challenge. All of that said, if I know Conor McGregor the way I think I do, that would be appealing to him. He cares very much about his mixed martial arts legacy. So in theory, this would be a huge opportunity for him to bounce Khabib from the ranks of the unbeaten and be the guy to slay the dragon, so to speak, even though, Conor has been the man for a long time. He'll be the underdog that night. So, I think a lot of athletes, elite athletes, they like being the underdog, and hopefully that type of situation appeals to Conor.